What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pete's Carport, and on today's episode we're going to dive back into our 1985 Euro spec 190e. It's a 2.0 liter version, and yes, it is a manual 5-speed, which is the reason why we picked this car up. And what we need to do today is fix our only cooling issue right now, which is the clutch fan is failing to engage. So instead of trying to fix that and find the proper clutch, which is quite difficult for this 2.0 liter, we went ahead and picked up an aftermarket electric fan, which a lot of your performance people do. And eventually this car might be beefed up a little bit for the track. Right now it's going to be a daily driver for me and just a fun car that's going to get good gas mileage. So I want to go ahead and get this set up, and I'll explain to you guys more about the fan and also the thermostat switch that we might be installing today as well, which will control the fan. So on a lot of vehicles out there, you've got a clutch controlled fan which spins and cools off your radiator. It basically sucks out the heat. Now ours is not working, and I've already went ahead and removed the bolt, and it'll slide off just like that. And I believe we either have a bad bearing in here or something is not engaging properly. But like I said, it'll be more difficult for me to find these parts, and ordering in wrong parts has been a common theme with this car. So what I did was decided to go with just an aftermarket electric fan. And what that means is instead of being belt driven, this fan is going to run right off of our battery and can be controlled with a thermostat switch. So I've already went ahead and kind of mocked everything up on how I want to do it. This fan is a fan I found on Amazon, and it had really good reviews and came in a multitude of sizes. And after pulling it out of the box, it's a very heavy duty fan. A lot of people running performance engines basically left reviews saying that it was a great fan for even towing heavy trucks and so forth. They put this on here for extra cooling, and there was really not any major bad reviews on this fan. I believe I picked up the 12-inch here, and it ranges from, I believe, 8 inches, and it goes on up, so if you need a bigger fan. And the way that we're going to mount this is going to be on this side, and we're going to mount it as a pull. So basically we're going to have it pulling the heat this direction. If you decide to mount it on the front and you've got room, you're going to mount it to push air. So you're going to want to push air across your radiator back out, or pull air away from your radiator. Now you can install both if you're running a heavy performance engine and you really need the extra cooling, but for us right now we're just going to be installing this. Now there are a few different ways you can basically run this fan. You can run it directly to a fuse so that when you turn the car on, turn the car off, it's running off the ignition, so you'd run it to a fuse that is controlled by the ignition switch. The downside to that is when you turn the car off, it turns off, and there are times, especially here in Florida, where you need the fan to continue to run because your temperatures are too high, and as soon as you turn your car off, the fan will shut down. Now, the next option would be to install a toggle switch on the inside of the vehicle, run the fan to that toggle switch with an inline fuse, and basically you control the fan by flipping the toggle switch on and off. The downside to that is going to be if you forget to turn the fan off, you go inside your house, your battery will most likely die by the next morning. So what the last option is to install a thermostat. What the thermostat does is it's going to basically mount into your cooling system area and run like a temperature gauge, telling the fan when to turn on and turn off. So that will allow it to run when you turn your vehicle off. Even if you turn your vehicle off, it'll allow it to run if the temperatures are too high for the thermostat to basically not send the signal. Okay guys, so let's get to mounting. So you've got your fan here, and the fan's going to have holes that are going to be around it like there. Now this kit comes with a couple different things. I could not find the instructions, so I don't know if I misplaced them or there is actually no instructions with it. But it comes with these little spring things, which from what I'm understanding are going to be if you need any distance from something, like if you're going to hit something and you need to give yourself a little gap, that would go in between basically these zip ties. And it does come with a zip tie style cord, and what that's going to do is slide into your hole like that. And let me show you guys how it can be mounted. So now once you've got your fan slid down in here, you've got holes on the sides of the radiator, and what you're going to do is run those zip ties. You're going to try to center the fan the best you can, and then basically run those zip ties to those holes and tighten them to mount it. Now, you're going to want to make sure your power cord is facing the direction that you need it, whether you're going to run it to a fuse box, run it directly into the vehicle, but you want to make sure that you have the right side so that you're not trying to run your wires over anything. You're basically going to be able to tie them up and run them down the side that you need. Let's go ahead. I'm going to get this mounted up real quick, and then I'm going to show you guys how we're going to run the power to this. Okay, so to make this simple and for everything to work, we're going to use our thermostat switch kit that we purchased to hook it up, even though we're not going to be hooking up the thermostat. And the way that we're going to do that is, if you look at this diagram here, this kind of breaks down how this setup works. This is a relay switch here, and it comes with a relay that pops in, and then you've got your wires that come out. If you look at the chart, basically your black wire goes to your thermostat unit here. Once this thermostat reaches a certain temperature, it grounds itself out. So what we're going to do is just run a direct ground for now until we can install this. So it's really a simple system. Basically, you run your red wire to your battery, your black wire would go to here or to a ground, and the ground is going to be constant instead of clicking on, so you'll just have your fan running all the time. Your brown wire is going to go to either a toggle switch, which we were originally thinking about doing, but we're not going to do, and it's going to go to the ignition switch. So we're basically going to run it to one of the fuses in the fuse box here that turns on when you have your ignition on, and when your ignition's off, it turns off. So what we're going to be capable of doing is, like, let's say we drive around and we notice our temperatures are still too hot. When we stop, we can keep the ignition on with the car off, allowing it to cool down. Now, I know that's an extra step because you can't leave the car at that moment, but at least that's a precautionary way of setting this up if you're not hooking up your thermostat. Eventually, we will get this thermostat hooked up. I just got to make sure I get an adapter that will work, because keep in mind, it won't work right if this does not touch the coolant. So we got to make sure that if I do get an adapter to fit into that bolt hole, this being a Euro spec car, my guess is the bolt holes are just different size. I have a neighbor that's a mechanic, and we looked at it and we were kind of trying to figure it out, and he said just bypass it for now, you'll work fine. We're in Florida, so running a fan all the time is not a bad thing. So that is how we're going to set it up. I'll show you guys this diagram one more time. It's a very simple diagram. I will link this set down below. It was a very inexpensive thermostat set that I got on Amazon. And we'll go back over here and I'll show you how I mounted the fan. Now, I did take the wires out this direction because we are going to be going one of the wires to our thing over here. But I may convert that around because our battery's over there, and I'm basically going to mount that relay switch near the battery, because most of what we're going to do is going to go to a ground, the battery, and I think I can just run a wire along here safely to the fuse box instead of coming down here. So I'm probably going to go ahead and flip that around just so I'm not crossing wires over, but it did mount in there really nicely. It's nice and sturdy, it's not going anywhere. So the zip ties did work. These other zip ties that I had mentioned earlier that came with the kit are actually designed to go through the radiator, but they do not work on my style radiator. There's not the holes in the radiator are not big enough for it to go through, and from what I've read online, these don't typically work on most radiators, but when they do, it's kind of a neat little feature. You can slide it right through the radiator and have it mounted right in the middle. So let's go ahead and get the relay set up, and if you're interested in setting this up with the thermostat, there's only really one extra step. You've just got to find your mounting hole somewhere near where your cooling system is, you know, your thermostat, your housing for your water pump, all that type of stuff. There's usually a blank bolt that this will mount into, and they even give you an adapter. So it's kind of similar to if you're setting up a temperature gauge, which I have a video on as well. You're just going to mount in that hole, and this is going to be where your ground wire goes, your black ground, instead of to the ground of the vehicle. So grounding it to the vehicle is just going to make it run once you turn your car on. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get everything set up, and hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Please comment below if you have any questions. I just sat down for the last like 20 minutes, looked over this, and made sure I could basically translate this to make sense, because as soon as I looked at this relay switch, I was set on doing it this way, because it makes way more sense than trying to run an inline fuse and use my own wires when I had already purchased all this. And if I decide to go this route, all I've got to do is take my ground, undo it from the ground of the car, and go right to this. So let's get set up and I'll show you guys how it all goes together and how it works. Okay guys, so everything is nicely mounted up. I've got my fan now mounted with the wires facing this direction, zip tied nice and tight there with clearance. I basically mounted the red wire to the blue wire, which is your main power for the fan, and the black wire just went to a ground. So you basically want to just ground that to the car, and that's what I did here, or you can run it to the ground on the battery. It's easier just to ground it to the car there. And then your relay, you can mount this anywhere, but I mounted it close to here because of our short red wire needing to go to that. So I zip tied up the extra cables there. Out of the relay goes your red, your brown, and your black. Now normally the black is going to go to the thermostat and it will ground out when it reaches a certain temperature, kicking the fan on. Instead, we ran this wire straight through here with our power wire, and our black went right to the ground on the battery. The red went to the positive on the battery, and it has an inline fuse that came with the system here. So that's basically what that is. Now our brown wire is going to run to the fuse box on the other side, and I've already ran a wire through, and it's going to go to a fuse that kicks on when you turn on your ignition. So that brown wire is always going to go to an ignition style switch, because that's just what's going to send the power. Now normally to reach a certain temperature, the thermostat grounds out and the fan kicks on. I'm going to show you how, if I touch the brown wire here, which would be basically like if we turned on our car and we had it running to the fuse box over there, it clicks on our fan, and it is nice and powerful. It blows, basically it's sucking out the air from the radiator and pulling it back into the engine well and dispersing it. So that's going to allow your radiator to stay nice and cool while you're driving, because you're going to actually create airflow through it naturally by driving. So if you're sitting, this fan running is going to keep it cool. We have a temperature gauge that seems to be functioning 100% in the inside of this car, so I'm not too concerned with that. I really hope this helps you guys out. If you need to pause it, watch that diagram. If you purchase this kit, because I am going to link below the thermostat kit, it was very inexpensive and it is functioning properly. And this fan, and you can select the size fan you need. Obviously you can see how small our radiator is, so I could not go too big on my electric fan. I'm going to link that down below. This application will work on almost any vehicle where you have the clearance and the setup to fit all of these components in there. So don't think that it has to be on this car only. This is how you're going to set it up pretty much across the board. And I highly suggest, if you have the proper fitting for the thermostat area, to where you can get that that switch hooked up so that it grounds itself out when it reaches a certain temperature. And I'm not sure what that temperature is, but I'm guessing between 160 and 170 will probably kick on the fans. That will allow you to have your fans kick on automatically, and you don't have to worry about them running all the time. My goal is, this is going to be a car in Florida, so I'm not worried too much about it running all the time. These don't tend to burn out that easily, so being that I'm not driving it every single day, it will be a shared daily driver for me. So in the summertime, no AC, probably won't be driving it too much. So it will stay nice and cool for me most of the time. Hopefully this helps you guys out. My name's Pete. This is Pete's Carport. I really hope you guys are still enjoying the 190E videos. And go and watch the rest of them. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I've got lots more content. I'm going to step back and show you guys this car. We basically redid the rims on it. We put a big brake kit on it. All of those videos were more recently, so if you go check those out. This car's only been part of the channel for a short time. We do have an S600 V12. I've got my 420 SEL, it's an 86 over there, and 95 S500 VIP build that I've been doing. That is at the shop right now getting the tires balanced. And so I had a chance to work on this during that. We've also got an SC300 2JZ drift build that we're doing, and my goal is to get that done within the next 6 months and be able to take it to a track. So you guys have an awesome day. My name's Pete. This is Pete's Carport.